Hello and welcome to WION World is One. I'm Ghadi Francis and this is the West Asia Post, our weekly show where we bring you stories from the world's most volatile region. There are no permanent friends or permanent enemies in geopolitics, only permanent interests. West Asia is going through some serious realignments. Old foes are learning to live with each other. A superpower is recoiling after decades of interference, and others are vying for more power in the region. In our top story this week, we decode this realignment in West Asian relations.
There's been a major breakthrough in West Asia. The nuclear deal talks have shown some progress. On Sunday, the UN atomic watchdog chief visited Tehran. He had a tough assignment. 1. Bring Iran back to the negotiating table. And 2. Avoid the West from passing a resolution against Iran. But Rafael Grossi got the job done. Iran's atomic energy chief will visit Vienna next week. That's when the UN atomic watchdog will hold its annual conference. Iran may not attend, but there will be talks on the sidelines. Plus, Tehran has permitted the IAEA to service its monitoring equipment. Basically, cameras that observe the nuclear facilities. Most of it had either been destroyed or damaged. Iran even admitted the removal of the damaged cameras. The IAEA chief will soon return to Tehran to install new cameras.
I did not get any promises. One thing I got is the agreement that this is something that needs to be done. And this is why I hope to be very soon in Tehran to have this type of conversation, which is badly needed.
These are big concessions from Iran. But the question is, how will the West respond? They were planning to push a resolution against Iran in Vienna. That seems to be off the table. The next step is sanctions. Joe Biden had made his position clear. Iran must rejoin the nuclear deal. Only then will sanctions be lifted. Tehran's position is the exact opposite. Lift the sanctions and we will rejoin the deal. The new president, Ibrahim Raisi, says he's open to talks, but not for the sake of it. Clearly, he wants incentives. But will the US oblige? There are some positive indications. Washington is slowly withdrawing its commitments to Saudi Arabia. First, they pulled out US soldiers. Now they're removing US defense systems. Patriot missiles stationed near Riyadh have been redeployed. The timing of this move is important. Saudi Arabia is being targeted by Iran-backed rebels in Yemen. Just a few days back, a Saudi prince publicly asked US to not pull the missiles, but Washington did it anyway. And that's not all. Joe Biden ended America's support for Riyadh's war in Yemen. On 9/11, he declassified documents that link Saudi nationals to the attack. Some of them are Saudi government officials. On cue, Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin cancelled his visit to Riyadh, a sign of America drifting away from Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, others in the region are playing the role of mediator. On Sunday, Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi visited Iran. He met with President Ibrahim Raisi. Iraq is supposed to be the middleman here. They have hosted 3 rounds of Iran-Saudi talks, and last month they brought both sides together at the Baghdad summit. There is clearly appetite for mending ties. The West Asian Cold War has gone on for far too long. Iranians and Saudis are fighting too many proxy wars, wars that are neither helping them nor the region. In fact, there is precedent for such interactions. In 1998, Iran's former president Hashemi Rafsanjani visited Riyadh. He discussed oil and Iraq. In 2012, President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was invited to Mecca. So the two forces coming together is not impossible. What we are seeing now is a lot of de-hyphenation. Saudi Arabia and US do not come as a package, neither does Israel and the US. Regimes are insulating themselves from larger power plays. They are showing that they can talk separate and engage with each other on separate issues. A realignment that is shaping the politics in the region. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Like always, we will continue to bring you all the latest updates from the heart of the conflict. Don't go anywhere, we have a lot more lined up for today. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across West Asia.
According to experts, Israel's program of booster jabs has proved effective, especially in reducing severe cases of COVID-19, even as new infections hover near record highs. Yemeni pro-government forces forced fire at several positions of the Houthi rebels, as the fight for the control of Marib continues in the war-torn nation. Four out of the 6 Palestinian prisoners who escaped the Israeli prison have been recaptured, as Palestinians across the West Bank protested in their support.
It has been 1 year since the historic Abraham Accords was signed at the South Lawn of the White House. It was supposed to be the dawn of a new West Asia, but 12 months later, what have the normalization deals achieved?
For decades, Arab nations had a three-nose policy. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and no negotiations with Israel. It had been almost 30 years since Israel established relations with an Arab neighbor. But last year, winds of change were blowing in West Asia. Israel made new friends, and Arab ones at that. The United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, the Sudan, and Morocco. Normalization was the word on the streets, and the South Lawn of the White House was witnessing history.
After decades of division and conflict, we mark the dawn of a new Middle East.
The peace deal marks the dawn of a new West Asia. For decades, the Arabs and Jews have been enemies. The Arab world boycotted Israel and backed Palestine. They insisted on a solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict before they recognized Israel as a country. That dispute is far from settled. But the peace deals signified a new West Asia.
Because this peace will eventually expand to include other Arab states, and ultimately it can end the Arab-Israeli conflict once and for all.
For Trump, it was a foreign policy win like no other. He accomplished what his predecessors promised and tried. But for Palestinians, this was a huge betrayal. Even though it put the annexation plan on hold, the peace deals did not have much for them. They even accused the Arab states of abandoning them. A year later, the economic benefits have come quickly for both the United Arab Emirates and Israel. Foreign Minister Yair Lapid made a landmark visit to the UAE in July, opening an embassy in Abu Dhabi and a consulate in Dubai, while the UAE established an embassy in Tel Aviv. In just 1 year, Israel reported over $750 million in trade with the UAE. Over 25 agreements have been signed in over 15 sectors. Israel's finance ministry expects business to reach $1 billion by the end of 2021 and $6.5 billion by 2025. As for Bahrain, several collaborations have been announced. In January 2021, the National Bank of Bahrain signed MOUs with Israeli banks.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency.
In March, Bahrain signed a $3 million agreement with Mekorot to share knowledge and technologies. These are big deals and big numbers. But what does it mean for the region? The Abraham Accords came with the promise of peace. But the recent Gaza conflict has many questioning that claim. Analysts suggest that the normalization deals are more about business and less about changing the situation on ground and in Palestine. As for who will join the deal next, all eyes remain on Saudi Arabia. For years, Riyadh has settled on one position. Settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a precondition for normalizing ties. This is a stance that carries great weight in the Arab world. But over the years, the kingdom's position has seen a shift. This shift was spearheaded by Prince Mohammed bin Salman. However, the Israel move could be his biggest test so far, and Saudi Arabia seems to be in no hurry. Any normalization efforts will not be without a backlash, and it is likely to reignite criticism amid Palestinians. West Asia could witness more peace deals in the future. But the question remains, will it bring peace to the region? West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
We have been reporting on the crisis in Lebanon from the heart of the country for a year. We have been calling for leadership to take action. For now, the wait is over. Lebanon has a new government after 13-month wait. Leaders formed a new cabinet. But is this new government the answer to all of Lebanon's problems? We take a look.
13 months, multiple crises, and several meetings later, Lebanon has a new government.
I hope we can rise with this government. I hope we can reach what the people wish for and at least stop the current collapse and together bring dignity and prosperity back to Lebanon, God willing.
The new cabinet is being led by Najib Mikati. Mikati is often considered to be Lebanon's richest man, one of the wealthiest in West Asia with a net worth of $2.7 billion. He first entered Lebanese politics in 1998 when he was appointed Minister for Transport and Public Works. It is a post he held until 2004 under 3 consecutive cabinets. He then emerged as Prime Minister in 2005 when he headed a 3-month interim government. In 2011, he came back at the helm of a government dominated by the Hezbollah. He unveiled his team of newcomers, including some technocrats. All of them have been endorsed by at least one of the dominant political parties. The 24-member cabinet includes only one woman. This cabinet now faces the daunting mission of carrying out reforms to lift the country out of crisis. The task for the government is an uphill one. The Lebanese pound has lost more than 90% of its value. Inflation has soared, people's savings are trapped in banks. Foreign currency reserves are plummeting. Petrol and medicine have become scarce, and almost 80% of the population now lives in poverty.
It is true that we don't have a magic wand. The situation is very difficult, but with strong will, determination and planning, we can all as one team achieve for our patient and hurting people some of what they hope from us.
But many Lebanese citizens have questioned whether the new team was up to the task. They also highlighted the demands of the 2019 protest movement for an end to alleged mismanagement and corruption.
Of course, you should be optimistic about the formation of a government because it's in the interest of the Lebanese people. It's in the interest of each citizen because we're all suffering from everything we are going through.
I don't know what will happen to me and my path. To be honest, we've lost hope in this country. We used to love it, but we don't anymore. Now we just want to flee from it.
Meanwhile, Hezbollah is bringing Iranian fuel into Lebanon via Syria. A move that could ease the crippling energy crisis but risk provoking US sanctions on the country. Dozens of trucks carrying Iranian fuel oil entered northeast Lebanon, where Hezbollah's yellow flag fluttered from the lampposts. The move marks an expansion of Hezbollah's role in Lebanon, especially subverting the government in power. The Lebanese government said it received no request for the fuel to be imported from Iran, which means that the Hezbollah bypassed the state. Hezbollah has said it will donate fuel oil to institutions in need, including government hospitals and orphanages. Hezbollah's move comes as Mikati vowed to hold the May 2022 parliamentary elections on time. Lebanon has been calling for an overhaul ever since the protests rocked the country in 2019. The elections are an opportunity to vote out the old guard. But many say that the political parties will do anything they can to hold on to power, even postpone the polls in the crisis-hit nation. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
The Syrian forces have entered Daraa for the first time in years under a Russian-brokered peace deal. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with his Syrian counterpart Bashar al-Assad, taking a swipe at the presence of US forces in Syria. We tell you more. The Russian and Syrian flag fluttered atop buildings damaged by years of war. For years, Daraa was known as the cradle of Syrian revolution. But the fighting here never stopped, even after a decade of intense offensives. For now, an uneasy calm held sway in the city after the army entered Daraa under a truce deal. Daraa province returned to the government control in 2018 under a previous ceasefire backed by Syrian government ally Russia. But rebels stayed on in a southern part of the city, clashing with the government forces, especially on the outskirts seeking to retake the area. A new Moscow-brokered truce has seen dozens of opposition fighters being bussed out of the city over the past few weeks. Government forces have been returning to the area as bulldozers cleared away rubble between battle-scarred buildings. While the guns had fallen silent in the city, the areas are largely devoid of civilians. 9 checkpoints have been set inside and on the edge of the city. The fighting since July caused more than 38,000 people to flee the southern half of the city. At least 23 civilians were also killed in the weeks-long escalation before the truce. As the Russian flags flew on the top of buildings here, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad held talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. Putin has been a key ally of the Assad regime throughout the conflict. Russia's military intervention in 2015 at Assad's request helped turn the tide of the war in his favor, with Moscow still maintaining key military bases in the country. While the unannounced talks hailed the joint efforts, Putin managed to take a shot at America, slamming the presence of foreign troops in the country.
The main problem, in my view, is that foreign armed forces remain in central regions of the country without the approval of the United Nations and without your permission.
There are roughly 900 US troops still deployed in Syria. The US-led coalition is based in the northeast of the country, where it backs Kurdish fighters battling remnants of the Islamic State. The meeting comes at a time when the US is moving away from West Asia, pulling troops out and shifting focus away from the region. As the vacuum emerges, Russia could be one of the first ones to play a key role in defining the politics in the region. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One. Camels are all the rage in West Asia. They are paraded in beauty pageants, made to take part in races across the region. And camel milk is a sought-for product in the Gulf. This has spurred high demand of superior demands, leading to scientists in Dubai cloning camels to produce carbon copy beasts. We tell you more.
They are known as the ships of the desert. They are used to transport milk, carrying thousands across the sands of the Arab Peninsula, a symbol of the traditional Gulf culture. Camels in the modern world are in high demand too. They take part in beauty pageants, they participate in races across the Gulf, and the demand has suffered a need for cloning. Cloning is in high demand across the Gulf, especially in the competitive world of camel beauty pageants. This has left scientists at a Dubai clinic working round the clock to produce carbon copy beasts. Not every animal is blessed with sought-after drooping lips, after all, or a tall, elegant neck made for pageants. But technology now allows wealthy clients to replace their most beautiful camel with one just like it.
We have cloned some of the beauty queens also, and they are genetically same, exactly genetic same copy of the beauty queens. Now the question is whether they will, be beauty queens. They will be exactly same genetically, but when the next time when they will be in the competition, whether there will be any other better than them in the competition, that is the question.
Beauty pageants are not the only driver of the camel cloning industry. Many customers want to reproduce racing camels or even animals that produce large amounts of milk. But beauty pageants are the most popular order. Gulf clients will pay between $54,500 to $109,000 to duplicate a promedary that they want. These camels are then paraded at dusty racetracks, scrutinized by judges in the high-stakes contests. Dubai claimed the world's first cloned camel almost 12 years ago. The camel was a female one called Injaz, whose name means achievement in Arabic. She was born on the 8th of April in 2009 after more than 5 years of work by scientists. But from the minute Injaz was born, there was no going back.
We produced our first baby, which was called Injaz. That was the world's first clone camel in 2009. And from 2009 onwards, then there was no go back. We are producing plenty of maybe more than 10-20 babies every year.
Cloning dogs, cows and horses is popular in many countries. Although animal rights groups denounce the process, they say it causes undue suffering to the animals. They provide the egg cells and carry embryos, with orders flying into the UAE cloning clinics. Scientists develop new technologies to keep up with the pace. Breeding centers use a surrogacy technique to increase the number of offsprings, whether from cloning or traditional breeding methods. But cloning is not just for those who want to own elite camels. Sometimes clients simply want to reproduce a beloved animal, especially after its sudden death. And cloning allows them to have a carbon copy beast. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay home and stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis, and you're watching WION. World is One.